So, welcome to the review session again. The way this works is I give you a brief overview of the format to the test, just kind of talk about how many questions there are going to be, what type of questions there are. Then I just basically reword concepts that are important for the test and then ask you questions. And then afterwards, like the last 10 minutes or so, it's Q&A, whatever questions you have. So if you want me to explain something that you don't understand, I can do that again, okay? So, in terms of the test tomorrow, if you look at the syllabus, it says it's 50 points. All 50 points are going to be on the clicker, or think like multiple choice matching kind of style. So the first 20 questions are multiple choice, and this is a little bit of everything. So I tried to evenly distribute it between Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. So you're going to get about 10 questions from Chapter 1 and about 10 questions from Chapter 2 that are multiple choice. Then there's 2 sections of matching in groups of 10. In that, again, it's a little bit from Chapter 1 and a little bit from Chapter 2. One of the things I believe in, since obviously this is a dual credit class, you get college credit for it, there's going to be a few concepts on the test that I don't talk about at all in class, but that are in the book. So you go to college, a lot of the tests you take, there'll be big portions that aren't talked about in class. I don't quite go as far as like the upper level classes I took, obviously. This is an intro class, but there are still just a few questions that you wouldn't get unless you got lucky or reasoned really well or read the book, obviously, okay? So there's 2 different sections of matching in groups of 10, and then the last section is the identification piece. So the things I would study would be the notes, either what you wrote down or what you got off of Dropbox, the table. The yellow table, if you filled that out really well and thoroughly, because it's got a column for the people that are involved and the definition and important concepts and all that, if you filled the table out really well, that yellow table will probably get you about 20 questions worth of material. So notes, table, and then obviously read the book. So that's in general what the format is like. Tomorrow I'll have a computer card in here, so after you're done with the test, it's 50 questions, matching, should go pretty quick. The matching section especially, and identification. Any remaining time in class people can use to work on the wiki. Obviously you'd have to be quiet till everybody's done, so you wouldn't be able to sit by your partners and work with them. Okay? Is the format clear? Format to the test is clear? It's clear as 7-Up? Very good. So let's talk a little bit about a few of the things. Let me just give you a statement. We'll start with the identification piece first, and then I want you to tell me if it best matches biological, sociocultural, cognitive, humanistic, behavioral, or psychoanalytical, okay? So, if I were to, let's just start with people first, okay? Ivan Pavlov, Pavlov's dogs, where he rang the bell and then they started to salivate. Which theory would that be associated with? Behavioral is correct, good. So he basically discovered classical conditioning. How about John Watson with Little Albert and the Rat? Behavioral as well. What about Sigmund Freud? Psychoanalytical. Good. How about B.F. Skinner? Skinner is behavioral as well. How about Carl Rogers? Humanistic. How about Abraham Maslow? Humanistic also. Good. So with the sociocultural and the biological approaches, there really isn't a person that's tied to those approaches, okay? Another important person, Wilhelm Wundt, what did he do?
First laboratory for psychology.
First lab specifically dedicated for psychology. Good. When we study psychology, what are the 2 focuses of psychology? When I did my intro, Greg, at least in period 7, Greg and Danny brought it up.
Mental processes and behavior.
Behavior and mental processes. So, which of the theories is the most heavily focused on conscious mental processes? Cognitive. Which one is the most focused on behavior? The behavioral. Good. When you hear the term subconscious or unconscious, what's that associated with?
Psychoanalytical.
Psychoanalytical, conditioning. Behavioral. Reinforcement. Behavioral. Good. Which perspective in psychology says that mental states are to behavior as causes to effect? Mentalism. A related thing is called the trilogy of the mind. It basically tries to break down mental states. It breaks them down into 3 categories. What are those 3 categories?
Cognitive, emotional, motivational.
Cognitive, emotional, and motivational. So when you hear the term cognitive, that's referencing thinking processes, memory, reasoning, different things like that. Who's the main guy for the cognitive perspective? Jean Piaget. He came up with a 4-stage model of development, of cognitive development. What's the first stage?
Sensorometer.
Sensorometer. No.
No.
Sensory motor. Okay, second stage? Pre-operational. Third? Concrete. Fourth? Formal operational. Okay, what's the key part of the first stage? Yeah, you respond to stimulus in your environment because you haven't developed the thinking and reasoning capabilities. Good. How about the second stage? What's the key in the second stage? Where you first start to use symbols. Third stage?
You see causation.
See causation. Fourth stage? Think abstractly and critically. Very good. What's the difference between a theory and a hypothesis? Not necessarily. You're close.
Is a prediction more, or no, hypothesis is more of an educated guess, and then a theory is something that's been tested.
Yeah. So a theory is something that you can't definitively necessarily 100% prove. But a hypothesis is like an earlier part of the scientific method. So with a hypothesis, it's an educated guess, it's what you think is going to happen. With a theory, there might be something that comes around later that disproves a theory. So you can't definitively prove it necessarily, but it does have a lot of weight behind it scientifically. So to give you an example, the geocentric theory versus the heliocentric theory, we talked about that in the scientific revolution, if you remember, in world history. Who is the guy, random question that doesn't matter for psych, but who is the guy that came up with the heliocentric model?
Copernicus.
Copernicus.
Oh, yeah.
Very good, Copernicus. So, again, theory is more solid in essence, okay? So a theory is something that's fairly complex and is based off of, like Mason said, a decent amount of research that's been done. What's the difference between basic and applied science? Basic and applied science, what's the difference?
Basic science is the pursuit of knowledge about a natural phenomenon for its own sake. I have Quizlet.
Yeah, you have what?
The Quizlet.
Yeah, I have Quizlet linked on my SharePoint page if you want to do those. That would help you. It's not, doesn't matter, you won't get extra credit or anything for it, but, yep.
And then applied science is discovering ways to use scientific findings to accomplish particular practical goals.
Right, so basic is knowledge for its own sake. Because you're interested in something, you learn about it more. You don't have a specific purpose for it. Applied science is taking that knowledge and trying to help somebody or solve a problem or whatever. Good. Let me give you a few numbers, and I want you to tell me what the mode, median, and mean is. Okay? Let's just keep it simple. Here's the numbers: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's the numbers. Well, actually, I gotta add a couple more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then let's go 5, 7. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 7. What is the mode? 5, because it's the most occurring number in a sample. Good. What is the median? 4. Yep. And then what's the mean?
Like 3.95-ish.
What is it? 22? Divided by 7? So, isn't that 5? Yeah. So the 3.14 roughly is the mean. Okay? Good. So if you see some lists, you'd be able to calculate those, right, and tell what they are. That's pretty straightforward. Let's say I do a study where I want to figure out if I give people muscle milk before they work out, how much are they able to lift? Okay, how much does that affect their lifting? And everything else is the same. Like we have people we're trying to control everything else, what would the muscle milk be called? The what?
Variable.
Independent variable.
Independent variable. What's the dependent variable then? How much they lift. Good. What would be, if I set that study up and expanded on it, what could be the experimental group?
People who are getting the muscle
The
milk.
people that get the muscle milk, and then what's the control group?
People that don't.
People that get a placebo or that don't get the muscle milk. Good. If I find out that the more muscle milk people take, the bigger their lifting capability goes up, what type of correlation is that?
Positive.
Positive, they both go the same direction. If they take muscle milk and it goes down, okay, opposite direction's negative. So don't think like good or bad in this, think like, do they move in the same direction, okay? Good. Let's say I am doing the same study with muscle milk and I'm handing it out to people and I have a placebo also. Looks like muscle milk, but it doesn't have protein or whatever else in it. So in that instance, I know who's getting the real muscle milk, but you guys don't and you're part of the study. What type of study is that?
Single blind.
Single blind, if I don't know and you don't know, somehow there's like a code on there that a different person knows the difference, what would that be then? Double blind. Good. If I give Ashley the placebo and she lifts more, what is that called? Placebo effect. Good. Okay. What are things, the general term for things that could change in a study? What is that?
Variable.
A variable, exactly. So in experiments, the goal is to try to control as many variables as possible. If you can't control variables or variables get introduced that you don't want to get introduced, what's the general term for that? There's some bias in the study. Good. So if, let's say, I am observing you guys behave, and I want to figure out what a typical student is going to behave like in a class where a teacher wears their hat all the time, for whatever reason, versus no hat. But then the principal comes in and you start to like not act as crazy as you would normally or whatever. What type of bias is that?
Subject.
More specific.
Is it subject bias or no?
More specific.
The social desirability.
Social desirability bias, exactly. Okay? So know the different types of bias and be able to distinguish between those. Okay, how about the early theorists, the people that laid the background for psychology? Which one is emphasized on how people look at the whole picture, the whole pattern of mental processes and behavior to try to make conclusions? The term itself literally means whole pattern.
Oh, Gestalt.
Gestalt psychology, good. What about the ones that believe that everything, mental processes and behavior are all about adaptation and survival?
Functionalist.
Functionalists, good. Okay, what's the difference between cognitive and physiological? Cognitive and physiological, what is the difference, Dylan?
Cognitive is the thinking process and physiology is the behavior.
No.
The actions.
No, not necessarily. Physiological isn't necessarily behavior in actions.
Isn't it like the brain activity?
Yeah, it's something physical that happens to an organism. Good. Or that they, engage in. So if you're analyzing amino acids, enzymes in the brain, all that, that's physiological. Cognitive is not just, thinking or reasoning, it's memory and sensation and a lot of that stuff too. Or perception, I should say. Okay. Mean, median, and mode are all measures of what?
Frequency.
No. Central tendency, exactly. So what is the term for a measure that tells me how different all of the samples are within a spread?
Correlation.
No, that's if they are related. If they move at the same time. What's
Oh,
the
isn't that
thing?
like the accuracy and
No. If I'm trying to see why, like, it's 80 here, a score on a test, let's say 80 and 60, and then we have 70 and 65, and I'm trying to statistically analyze the spread. What's the general term for things that do that?
Like reliability?
No?
Correlation.
No? Okay, you'll have to look that part up too. That part is in the book. No, it starts with a V. Variance. Variance is right. Good. Variance. So let's go back to reliability and validity then, because some people were bringing that up. If I'm going to shoot baskets, and the goal is to make it in the basket, obviously, right? And every single time I shoot a basket, it airballs it, but I hit the net, right? I don't hit the rim, but every single time it hits the net. Hits the net, hits the net, hits the net. What is that? Reliable,
But not valid.
but not valid, because I'm not getting what I want exactly. Good. Let's see. How about, let's use the example of tests in school, just like I talked about in class. If I get a test and I give it to, let's say, Abby, and she retakes it and she gets the same score, and she retakes it and she gets the same score, and then I find out that she had a really bad migraine each time. That test is probably not what?
Valid.
It's not valid because
Migraine.
the migraine got in the way of her actual capability to perform. So would the test be reliable in that instance from a statistical measure?
Yeah.
Yes, because
It was the same.
she got roughly the same results all the time. Statistically, for something to be reliable or valid, it doesn't have to be like the exact score every time. If I give a test and let's say Eric takes it 10 times and he gets a 91, a 92, a 94, 90, 91, 93, it's all in that range, you do a statistical analysis of that, it's gonna be reliable. You don't know that for sure. You don't know if it's valid, but you know that it's reliable. To know if it's valid, what do you have to know?
Outside effects?
Yeah, you have to know if it's measuring what it intends to measure. Exactly. Good. Okay, talked about that, talked about that. Okay, that's it. I went through everything. Some form or fashion, I went through everything. Pretty quick, huh?
Uh-huh.
So any questions? I mean, I didn't go through every single thing, but, I mean, I went through a lot of it, all the sections, so. Any questions at all? There are no parts of the brain on this test. No parts of the brain on this test. Just facts, no essay. The other tests we have that are worth 100 points, those will be 80 questions with an essay. So the ones that are just over 2 chapters, 50 questions, no essay. Okay? So again, for people here and then people watching at home, you can take notes on the video. You don't have to, but the people watching at home, take notes obviously, include times. There's Quizlets online if you want to study those. That might help you. Look at the table that I gave you if you filled that out well. Look at your notes and then obviously make sure you read. Good luck. Thank you for watching or attending. Have a good time. Have a good day.